Well, here we are again. Welcome back to the Cool Chicken Podcast. With me, as always, is my lovely wife, Mrs. Cool Chicken, acting as producer. It's the third show. Are you going to say anything this time? Nope, didn't think so. I promise you, she is real, and yes, you should pity her. You choose to listen. She has to deal with me on a daily basis. I didn't post an episode last week because it was a bye week, and I didn't fucking feel like it, so deal with it. I did, however, have a pretty good week. Got into some typical arguments that I get into, and some that were not so typical. And I'll get into all of that, but first, let's talk about Gamecock football. Last week, we got stomped by Georgia. I paused to let all of those in the Moral Victory Brigade lose their damn minds. I'm really starting to enjoy listening to and reading the MVB's comments. It's just free entertainment. I will say the game was interesting. The score, once again, did not really indicate the level of embarrassment that this game was. And I'm not going to break down the entire game. As you know, I don't do that. But I will give you some brief stats. Let's see. First downs. Georgia had 19. South Carolina had 13. Third downs. Georgia was 6 of 12. South Carolina was 2 of 13. Jesus. She's atrocious. Total yards. Georgia had 355. South Carolina had 318. Well, you know, that's not too far apart. Let's look at that a little bit deeper. Passing yards. Georgia had 29. Oh, shit. That's pretty good. South Carolina 288. Uh-oh. That seems a little positive. But unfortunately, Georgia had 326 yards rushing. South Carolina, 30. So Georgia, why even throw it? Ever. Why would anybody throw the ball against South Carolina? Just run it down our throats, and we will just gobble it up and ask for more. Georgia had 1 turnover. South Carolina had 3. Time of possession was 35 minutes to 25 minutes. The final score was 28-14, with Georgia putting the game away by running an onside kick back for a touchdown. And for my part, I will admit I was wrong. I expect Georgia to beat us by double digits. They did, but they didn't look like world beaters doing it. And what I was really wrong about was when I made fun of the Moral Victory Brigade for saying that Georgia would have a hangover from the Tennessee game. I said that they would not, that they would be, professionals and come ready to play. I don't know if it was that or the moving of the game and all that drama due to the hurricane, but Georgia did fool around long enough that South Carolina had a very minute chance to steal the game, which would have been a massive upset. It's been really interesting to watch teams play us this year. They seem to the game plan to exploit a very specific weakness, are kind of shocked that it's working better than they expected. Then they get nervous and change the plan, or at very least overthink it and lose the momentum. I mean, Vandy did it, ECU did it, Texas A&M did it, and now Georgia did it. The only one that didn't was Mississippi State, and they destroyed us. Georgia had no reason to throw the ball or even try. Just feed the ball to the running back. And despite all of that, Kirby, he's got Chubb. The backups were running roughshod over us as well. And yes, of course, Kirby benefits from having Chubb. Don't get me wrong. But look what happened the next week. Vandy managed to beat them despite all of the yards that Georgia racked up. And I'm not saying that Vandy's good, but they managed to get a drive when they needed it. And, something we just cannot seem to do, which everybody knows my feelings. Our coaches don't understand offense. Another thing that was interesting, and I noticed this too, is how much Muschamp and Kirby kind of resemble each other in style. I'm sure that after allowing an inferior South Carolina team hang around and then losing to Vandy, there are more than a few Kirby detractors out there. I'm especially curious to see how they perform once their current superstars, such as Chubb, are gone. Kirby is new, and Richt, despite not being that great at X's and O's, did have deep recruiting ties in the area. So I'm going to be really curious to see, again, what happens once Chubb is gone and Kirby's got his guys in there. I mentioned on the last episode, and I will again, and probably many more times, that while I am interested in the game and the team right now, I'm way more fascinated by the response of the fan base, and now increasingly by how the local media in Colombia is handling the team. But before I get into that, because that's going to be a lengthy segment, let's get to my favorite people, the Moral Victory Brigade. And let me give you my top 10 Moral Victory Brigade comments of the week. These are comments that I've heard either on the radio or seen on Twitter, what people are saying in response to the game or maybe in general. And I got 10 of them this week. And let's start out with number 10. I'm just going to listen to these professional coaches, and I'm sure Muschamp knows more than me. Probably, just being honest. With 1.5 minutes left, we were in 7 points in a game that shouldn't have even been close. We could have won. That just speaks to how good of a coach Muschamp is. I wonder how that person felt after Georgia lost to Vandy. Seeing that game, basically seeing that Georgia is not that good, and what they did as far as on the ground was, and how well Vandy stopped them, just terrible. 2018, we'll be awesome. Just got to be patient. The future is bright. Man, we're not even saying wait till next year anymore. It's wait until 2 years from now. You'll see, we'll be awesome. It wasn't that bad. We forced Georgia to punt 6 times, and they only had a total of 350 yards. Yeah, but 330 were on the ground. Yeah, they punted 6 times, but that wasn't really us. It was, the play calling for Georgia was the first punt. I mean, why would they do anything else but run? So, all right, punt 1. Incomplete pass. Punt 2. They got a 10-yard penalty, then which dropped them to 3rd and 16, incomplete pass. Punt 3, incomplete pass. Punt 4, penalty, loss of downs. Punt 5, incomplete pass. Punt 6, great series. Run, stuffed, run, stuffed, run, stuffed. I mean, that's great on the 6th punt of the game, but what were they going to do? Are they going to try to pass it again? Hell no. We stacked the box and we stopped. We should have done that the whole game. Let that freshman quarterback try to beat us. And we lost because of poor special teams and turnovers. Yeah, that was a part of it. Did you see the rest of the game, though? We lost for a myriad of reasons. I love it when people say we just lost because of one aspect. Hayden Hurst cost us a game by not fair catching a punt. I really want to give you this one because, one, why was Hayden Hurst the tight end returning punts? And 2, it really speaks to Muschamp's poor decision-making process. But nope, that play, no one decision cost us shit. The whole team was terrible. It wasn't Hayden's fault. The kid should have never been put back there. But I digress. You're wrong. That's not the reason why we lost the game. If the game comes down to any one decision like that, you lost before you started. This program hasn't even hit its peak. It hasn't. It has not hit its peak. And with this younger, aggressive staff, we could achieve so many things that we thought were previously impossible. Oh, you mean like beating Kentucky? Yeah, you're right. Muschamp will get us to the promised land of being in the middle of the pack in the East. Great. I can't wait to get to those peaks that we never even thought were possible. And this one, I honestly laughed out loud for 15 minutes. It was in response to a question, and the question was, this is a rough year. What's keeping your head up? Jesus. My personal relationship with Jesus gives me the faith that we will come through this with a better team and that he'll help us win a national championship. You just got to have faith. Hey, man, don't look now, but I think Jesus is a Bama fan. And based on what you're saying is that, national championships determines where Jesus' loyalty lies. He must be a Bama fan. Definitely not a South Carolina fan. Has never been a South Carolina fan based on that criteria. I tell you what, those boys, they believe in Champ. They believe in him, and so do I. You do realize these are 18-year-old kids. Let me give you a few movies released in 1998 just so that you can get a frame of reference. A Bug's Life, Saving Private Ryan, Armageddon, There's Something About Mary, The Big Lebowski, things that weren't invented yet, TiVo, USB thumb drives, the iPod, Blackberries, Wi-Fi. Didn't exist. Hell, Napster rose and fell before they were 3 years old. I'm not really sure they're going to be the best judge of character and what they should or should not believe in yet. They're kind of 18. Muschamp, he's a hard worker. He pays attention to details. We still don't know who the fucking quarterback is. That is one hell of a detail to miss. Bonus. Now this one is a bonus one. I saw this on Twitter and clicked the link. A 4-4 team, they can win the East. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Not only was this something that was said, there was a whole theory written up about how it could happen, and other people were buying in. Delusional. Even if by some miracle that happened, no way in hell that you can see it from where we are right now. All right, this week's game. UMass. They got me worried. They're 1-7. They are the type of team that we should... I mean, it should be a cakewalk for any team in the SEC. But unfortunately, South Carolina is really not playing like an SEC team, so I don't expect it to be a cakewalk. The game that has me worried is we do have a common opponent, which is Mississippi State. And UMass scored 35 points and put up over 400 yards in a losing effort against Mississippi State. But still, 35 points and 400 yards in a losing effort against Mississippi State. In addition, they averaged 20 points a game. The Gamecocks scored 14 points against Mississippi State and only gained a total of 243 yards. Unless something crazy happens, I'm not sure South Carolina can cover the spread. I came really close to picking UMass. I really did. But I'm hoping against hope that we're not that bad. Granted, our only 2 wins came against teams that beat themselves. I'm trying to talk myself, and I just can't do it. I will pick South Carolina in protest by 3 points. All right, so that's moving on from last week's game, this week's game. I've got to go into the title of this podcast, and to do so, I'm going to step out of character for the rest of the podcast because everyone knows the cool chicken is a character, or at least I hope you do. And this next subject is a little bit more about me specifically and something that an argument I got into. The title of this episode is The Company Man. What is a company man? Well, first, it's not limited to men. It can be a girl, but for the sake of making this simple and because the subject that we're talking about is primarily related to men, I'm just going to stick with a company man or the company man, and I'm going to use the male pronouns. So a company man is a person that works for a company and values that company over all things in his life. This includes his integrity and his rational thought. He'll abandon those in order to protect or defend his company. It's become a derogatory term that is synonymous with dishonesty. Another more severe and similar term is corporate shill. Another more common name would be a plant or a stooge. These are a little more severe because these types of people tend to promote a company or product without acknowledging that they work for or gain some type of benefit, monetary or otherwise, from the company that they work for and or the success of the product that they're talking about. The ironic thing about this for me is while I tend to call these type of people out, it's not because of what they're doing. It's not because they're pushing something. It's because if they were just honest about their allegiance, I probably wouldn't care that much. I mean, I buy things from salespeople all the time. And I also think it's the exact opposite of the intention to sell a product because it robs me of the ability to apply the appropriate amount of legitimacy to your opinion and or proclamations. And as a result, I tend to be a little less trusting of not just that person, but also the product. The reason for that should be clear, but just in case, having someone push a product without being honest about their vested interest in the product indicates that they don't believe they could be honest and still earn your business. They want to trick you into buying it and or believing them. I've never walked away from buying a product that is awesome or that I truly wanted because the person selling it works for the company that makes it. I have, however, done the opposite. I have walked away from buying something when I realized that the person that was pushing it had a vested interest and didn't disclose that. So why am I talking about this? Well, there's really no easy way to transition into it, but I've experienced a tremendous amount of pushback from radio stations local to Columbia, South Carolina, regarding my opinions of Will Muschamp. Oh boy, here we go again with Muschamp. We get it. You don't like that guy. No, don't turn off the podcast. This isn't technically about Muschamp, other than to say that I cannot fathom how someone can see the product on the field and not have serious questions about this man's ability to be a head coach. The only defense that they have, and it's a weak one, is the he just got here defense, which I don't get it's annoying whenever the Moral Victory Brigade says it, but I find it personally incredibly insulting when people who know football say shit like that, because this man did not come from the moon. He has a clear track record, and to polish that turd and sell it as anything other than a turd is just mind-boggling. And they're saying things like his previous and only, I might add, head coaching experience doesn't matter and isn't relevant to South Carolina. Dude, you said this wasn't about Muschamp. Sorry. So basically, my opinion doesn't fit the narrative that a specific radio station is pushing. The problem they have is that I'm not easily silenced, and I can give it back to them as hard as they give it out. That isn't something that most radio show hosts are used to. They're used to the typical call-in idiots who know very little about football. So they are not used to someone being able to think quickly and fire back. They're used to,
well, I have a microphone and you don't. So you will listen to every damn word I have to say!
They're used to being able to run roughshod. And whenever someone gives it back to them, it sometimes leads to a breakdown in professionalism. So they like to call me names and attack me personally. An example of this would be what happened with Tim Daly and Brent Johnson over on 107.5 The Game. I called in to their show. It was a lunch show, and tried to say my piece regarding Muschamp, and unfortunately, it didn't go well. I mean, they became incredibly rude and unprofessional. The two hosts of the shows were basically trying to shout me down. I had started out calm, and then they just kept trying to overtalk me, so I got louder and louder. But you can barely hear what I'm saying, and then they just cut me off. Worse, they immediately misrepresented what I was saying. This led to like a barrage of calls littered with insults directed at me by name. Now, do I own some part of that? Yes, I call it into a radio show. That is their domain, and you're pretty much at their mercy. It's their show. So I guess I expected them to, but I guess I expected them to be a little more, as I said, professional. But if they aren't, I have to accept that, and I willingly open myself up to it. I was so frustrated, that I blew them up on Twitter, and really, I was frustrated enough that I sent them a tweet basically saying that I thought they were unprofessional. And yes, I'm also responsible, again, for engaging them and giving them the ability to respond in the way they did. And we went back and forth for some small tweets, but ultimately, Tim Daly specifically called into question my football knowledge and implied that I knew nothing about football. So I asked him, where he got his coaching credentials, and I referenced that I got mine from USA Football. Now, giving him the benefit of the doubt, his response was probably colored a little bit because he does seem like a little bit of a hothead, and he may not have normally said what he said, but he ultimately ridiculed USA Football, which is a long-standing and well-respected organization. And I kind of laughed a little because the insult was very clunky and a poor attempt at a pop culture reference. Basically what he said was he said, who needs some Jack Reacher stupid certificate to know what's wrong with the offense? I'll laugh till Friday. Or something to that effect. And so there's two things about that. Number one, he missed the point. The point wasn't that you needed a coaching certificate or had to have been a coach to diagnose the offense. That's not what I was saying. What I was doing is I was rebutting his statement that I was ignorant about football. And this at least showed that I wasn't completely ignorant, and I knew a little bit. And then the second thing is that I guess the Jack Reacher thing, I'm assuming was a reference to how some consider Jack Reacher, which is a Tom Cruise movie, to be kind of a second-rate or cheap version of Jason Bourne, which is already kind of a cheap version of James Bond. And even though the reference is lame, the intent is what matters. And it's pretty sad that someone would attack me in that way. So I replied defending myself and my time as a coach. And he further doubled down and ridiculed me by implying that I must have yelled at those kids and that he was sure they learned nothing the entire time I was their coach. That's a pretty severe response, especially for a radio show host to level at someone that he doesn't really know. So let me say this. I am incredibly proud to have been a volunteer head coach and association president in a prominent nationwide youth football league. I spent 7 years running an association and coaching. I spent countless hours working directly with the youth in South Carolina. I went through intense training, classes, testing, and evaluations, all of which I aced. I spent untold hours and amounts of money out of my own pocket to make sure those young men and women, and yes, I did have a few girls that played for us, had a safe, socially healthy, and productive experience. I worked with over 200 kids each year. I put a ridiculous amount of work into it. My association and all the teams I coached were very successful. We even had a couple of championships in those 7 years. I was honored to be associated with them, the league, the National Association, and the academic program that I was credentialed through. I had the honor of getting to know some amazing kids in those years, and I will always hold a special place for them in my heart. When I left South Carolina and I had to give up coaching, I was very honored to have Coach Spurrier reach out to me. I still have the autographed helmet he sent me sitting on my desk. To Chuck, a super coach. Go Gamecocks. Steve Spurrier. Despite not being very happy with the way he left South Carolina, I was sincerely touched by this gesture. For a radio host to disparage every single person and institution associated with me based on a brief phone call in which this host insulted me and misrepresented what I was saying is unacceptable, and he should be ashamed. Now, I don't feel any need to go into that any further. I think this man's words and willingness to attack me in the way he did speaks volumes. However, he isn't the only one, and that's why I'm going into the subject. No one's insulted me the way this guy did, but another radio host who often comes across as extremely arrogant and as if he knows everything is Heath Klein, and he's on in the afternoon drive times on the same station. My issue with him, and ultimately 107.5 The Game in general, is how they try to shut down any critical conversation. They'll touch it, but then immediately move on and try to spin it positively. The only exception I will grant the entire radio station is the New Early Show. They do tend to be a little more honest than the rest of the crew. They do still have some sugarcoating, but it doesn't feel as phony as everyone else. So that's why I call pretty much everybody at that station company men or shills. And when I do, they like to pretend that people are ignorant and that we don't understand how radio works. Company man, that's funny. No one comes in here and tells me how to talk or what to say or what I'll say what I want. And maybe some people buy that. But me, I'm not stupid. And I did have a part-time job working at a very large radio conglomerate in sales, production for several years. And I do understand how it works. They pay a significant amount of money to have the exclusive rights to air the South Carolina football games and to be the flagship station. I've read a couple of different accounts of exactly how much. But ironically, I was working in radio at the time that 1400 The Team lost the rights and they went to 107.5. The numbers, and this is just what I heard, again, whatever you read, but this is what I heard at the time, were between $10 and $12 million. Now think about that. How much were the rights to broadcast a South Carolina football game worth before Spurrier? Not 10 to 12 million, and the ad space that you could sell was worth almost nothing. Again, I know that for a fact. Now, you're going to tell me that a radio station that is 100% a business is going to shell out that kind of money and then let you shit on the football team, or more specifically, in that time, Spurrier? No, sir. And it's not going to happen now with Muschamp. And think about this. You have relationships that you want to maintain so that you have access to these players and coaches. Kind of similar to how political parties work, i.e., you say something negative about a president or a candidate, and you're one of the people that attends these press conferences with the president or that candidate, and you're likely to get excluded from those press conferences. Or maybe there's a guy, even if they can't get away with excluding you, maybe there's a guy that's been trying to set up an interview and he doesn't get it. There are repercussions, and Muschamp's already proven that he does not like talking to the media. That's if they'll complain about something, it's that they'll say, "Oh, we don't get to talk to this person, this person." You're going to tell me that you're going to be fully open and honest about the University of South Carolina football program with all of that going on? I highly doubt it. This is even more true in small markets. And let's not forget, Columbia, South Carolina is like the 89th market in the country. So even that money they're making off that 10, 12 millions that they spent in order to have the rights, I mean, they're still scratching them to make the station relevant, because it's probably not. I mean, they're part of a bigger conglomerate now too. So they probably, like, whenever they look at the rankings, they're probably way down there, especially during a time when the team is shitty. So they have to be a little more positive. Now, let's take the notion of the university directly influencing the station out of the conversation. Well, we're going to pretend that doesn't happen. You are aware that anytime the radio station does something related to the university and you hear the name of a company/sponsor, that company/sponsor is paying out of the ass for those spots. The call-in show. You think the sponsors and locations are not paying a ridiculous amount of money to be a part of that? What about the studio sponsors? Let's go to the Capital Car Dealership Hotline. Pay me. We are live on location. Crazy Arms Hot Dogs. Pay me. We are at the hotel bookstore talking to. Pay me. And that's fine. I'm all about capitalism. But for you to try to pretend that things you say and do as a representative of the flagship station are not colored by that affiliation, and that it wouldn't affect your ability to sell those spots, you're selling boats in the desert. It's also kind of sad how little innovation these guys have. I heard a promotion the other day is like, pay $25 and get $50 worth of food. Come on, man. We were doing that shit back in high school with 104.7 WNOK before they were taking over. Do you know how long ago that was? Forever. And they're still using that same regurgitated format. And it's across the board. It's kind of why I like podcasting, because I'm not beholden to anyone. Now, don't get it wrong. I don't currently have sponsors on this podcast. Okay? I do on my other one. It's got a little more listenership right now, but we'll get there. This is only the third episode. But I don't need them. And I'm not hurting for sponsors or money. So if I say something that offends, okay, and you don't want to sponsor, see you later. Because I don't have a boss here. I'll be good either way. So what I say, like it or not, is 100% me, and there is no filter. You can't say that about people on radio stations. It's, again, I say this a lot, but it's intellectually dishonest. And I think it does damage. And after my experience with Mr. Daly, the callers that called in that mentioned me by names, it was like, go home, Tater. What an idiot. That guy's a moron. Nothing to attack the points, just the empty vitriol of people that want to stick their head in the sand and accept this putrid offense and coaching staff that was forced upon us. They encourage it. And I think it damages the university as a whole. So you have these radio shows that are echo chambers that push the narrative and parrot what the university says and what the coaches say, and they never say anything, really. And the people hear that, and they buy in. And as a result, they end up with a subpar program for life. For life. It's not cancer. It's not the biggest problem in the world. We have a lot of bigger things going on. But it's ironic that something that we have a problem with as a country, that we like to believe that our media and our role models are different from the rest of us. They're not. And people in general don't like confrontation. It's a tribal thing. Belong to the biggest tribe and puff out your chest and defend it. And if you don't, it harkens back to evolution. Some other tribe or thing is going to take your shit. I'm guilty of it too. Because why? After all this time. After all the times that I've disagreed with the things that the university has done, everything from the way they used to treat the former players to how they treat current players, talking about, Muschamp and this BMAC thing. How screwed up is that for this kid? And by the way, who called that? I called that, that this was going to happen. He's going to be a baseball player. He's not going to be on the football team much longer. And they're going to double down now and make it worse by burning Bentley's red shirt. It's just a shame. It's sad. So why am I still a Gamecock fan? Well, I love my state, and I love my school, and I love a lot of the people and the culture of the university and the fan base, even the ones that are part of the Moral Victory Brigade. I feel a kinship with anyone that yells out, "Go Cox." And I'm worried about them. I mean, Spurrier drugged these people kicking and screaming to a somewhat respectable program. Think about how people talked about him when he said don't cheer. They were pissed. Well, if I want to get out there and I want to clap and cheer, the boys, they deserve it. But he got them to think differently. He's gone now, and we're already back to the early days of the Moral Victory, sunshine pumping days. The catchphrases, we're ridiculed with them. Our enemies, our rivals, they just beat us over the head with them constantly because we're accepting being losers by hiring losers. We deserve it. I'm not going to try to imply that this podcast or me calling into the shows is going to change anything on a massive scale. But I think if I talk enough, maybe someone else will start talking, and then another person. And someone will hear me, and we won't make these mistakes again. If I have a problem with the local media in South Carolina, it's that. It's that you're being dishonest because you get a check. I understand that. Just don't try to pretend you're not. So recap, I'm picking South Carolina to beat UMass by 3 points under protest. I'm very worried about that game. I will be dismayed, but not shocked if we get beat. Again, I'm picking them. That'll be it for this week. Stay tuned. I did record some caller examples. In the meantime, may the force be with you. Let's step out to the phone lines. First up, Willie. Willie, going once. Hello. Yes, Willie, go ahead. Well, first I want to say it's my first time calling in, and I just want to say that I'm proud of the boys. Just want to say that they think to work hard. They don't quit, and I'm excited about the future. Now, Dave McCall off air. Listen to your thoughts on that. Well, thank you for the call, Willie. Yeah, the future looks amazing. They do work and they don't quit. Before we take our next call, let me remind you that we'll be at Crazy Flaps this Thursday for football calls, sponsored by Dud Smarter, an amazing beer. Now let's go back to the City National Car Dealer Window Tinting Dentist Lawyer hotline. Old Tom, thank you for waiting patiently. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for taking my call. Just want to say that you guys are amazing. I don't understand why everybody's being so mean to these kids. You got to remember they're kids and they're kids. They're kids, and it just makes me sad that people are being mean to these kids and bashing on these kids. I'll hang up and listen. Well, yes, Tom, they are 12 years old, and we do need to give them a chance to improve over the next 22 years. Then if we haven't improved by then, maybe we can consider them young men. Now let's go back to the City National Car Dealer Window Tinting Dentist Lawyer hotline. Well, hey, I think this team is terrible. Come on, man, come on. What would make you say that? Give me one reason. Well, we are dead last in the cup. That's enough. Thanks for the call. What do you expect? We're not going to win a national championship this year. It's a rebuilding year. I just don't understand how people could say that. I do not understand fans, but I guess that's what fans do. They get caught up and they're all emotional. And who's next? We got David. David, thank you for calling. Well, thank you for taking my call. The last guy's a flat-out idiot. He's probably never even watched a game of football in his life. He's just a dummy. If you don't like the team, you can go somewhere and pull for a different team. I didn't hear him say anything about what he would do to fix the team. He's a failure. He's a moron. He's a failure, probably a failure in life. He's a moron. Go away, you tater. David, you hit the nail on the head. Those types of negative guys, they never have answers for what they would do differently. That's a great call. Great way to be positive and call him names. It's a great call. What a guy. What a true, knowledgeable fan. We will take one more call. Jason, you have 20 seconds. Well, you know that caller before the last one. He is not a true fan. He probably leaves the stadium early and spits on the cheerleaders. We have to be positive, and we should trust everyone with everything and hope it all works out. I would like to make a prediction for this week's game. Well, you are aware, sir, this is a bye week. Yeah, that's right. We can't lose. We'll win by a score of 0-0. Well, that's clever. Great call. What a funny guy. What a funny guy. I hate my life.